They're known as the forever chemical, essentially because they don't degrade. They don't degrade in the environment. They also don't degrade in your body. They're also in receipts. Recently found out that they're also in toilet paper. They're in contact lenses. They're on furniture, right? They're everywhere. They're known as the forever chemical, essentially because they don't degrade. They don't degrade in the environment. They also don't degrade in your body. And so about 98% of people have PFAS in their blood and it doesn't degrade. And this is a harmful chemical.
Welcome to Liquid Assets. I'm your host, Ravi Kurani. Liquid Assets is a podcast where we talk about the intersection of business, policy, and technology, all as it looks at water.
Hi, my name is Julie Bliss Mullen. I'm the founder and CEO of Aclarity. At Aclarity, we develop and deploy proprietary electrochemical systems that destroy PFAS forever.
I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic over to you, Julie. If you can just kind of tell us who you are, what you're working on, where you live, your background. Let's jump into who is Julie.
Thanks, Ravi, for having me. I'm the founder and CEO of Aclarity. We're based in Massachusetts. I'm actually outside in our sunroom. I just got some new furniture, which is awesome. So hanging out here, live in central Massachusetts with my husband and my two kids. They're almost 2 and almost 4, so really fun ages. Our lab is also in Massachusetts, just south of Boston, so a town called Mansfield. What we do at Aclarity is we develop and deploy and service systems that destroy PFAS and liquid waste. So we go on site to customers that are owners and operators of landfills, also working with other technology providers that concentrate PFAS and then we destroy this chemical. We'll talk a whole lot more about PFAS too. The issue that we're solving right now is really, it's PFAS, right? So PFAS stands for per and polyfluoral alkyl substances. And I love to quiz people after, just kidding. But it's this kind of crazy chemical name for this massive group, 14,000 plus chemicals in this group of PFAS, this PFAS substances. They're typically used in products that resist water and resist oil. So think about raincoats or nonstick pans, right? Teflon pans. They're also in receipts. Recently found out that they're also in toilet paper. They're in contact lenses. They're on furniture, right? They're everywhere. They're known as the forever chemical, essentially because they don't degrade. They don't degrade in the environment. They also don't degrade in your body. And so about 98% of people have PFAS in their blood and it doesn't degrade. And this is a harmful chemical. It's likely carcinogenic. It's toxic. And it causes a lot of health, issues, especially in areas where PFAS has been found in the environment. There are a lot of cancer clusters around those areas. So it's pretty terrible. And because these are forever chemicals, it's very difficult to break them down. And we've actually found a way to very efficiently and cost effectively break them down in liquid streams.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely want to double click into kind of how you actually destroy PFAS, but let's maybe take a step back and go to like what is PFAS, right? You said it's obviously the forever chemical. It resists water and oil. Like for the audience out there, did we have PFAS before? Is it 1,000-year-old chemical that's like now coming out? Is it similar to lead? Like can you give us the history on PFAS and like why it's so bad?
Yeah, definitely. So PFAS was manufactured in the early to mid 1900s, and it's a super chemical, right? It resists water, it resists oil, it has these really great features, right? So it's been used in a lot of industries. And although you can probably look this up and debate it, but it hasn't been known publicly that it's been a harmful chemical until the 70s or so publicly. And it's been this massive movement. It's been this massive public movement, sort of a bottom up type of movement to start to remove PFAS from our environment, from, drinking water, groundwater, wastewater, soil, and then actually even at the facility, a lot of companies are trying to find alternatives, PFAS alternatives, so they can still have those really nice features that the chemical is able to provide, but not have the really devastating effects that are associated with it. From the regulatory standpoint, it is regulating PFAS anywhere in the environment is a mess. I mean, it's crazy. And if you were to Google PFAS, just straight out, you'll find a million articles, a million news pieces that come up. And yeah, every day there's breaking news on the PFAS side. So someone is suing somebody else. A municipality is trying to solve the problem because they have high detects of PFAS, and it's quite nuts. And states have taken the lead in regulating PFAS in different types of media, and I say in water and soil mostly. The federal government has proposed regulations around drinking water. Some of the work is kind of trickling down to the Clean Water Act, which and then more into the states, and so some discharge permits and actually most recently and kind of different from my perspective is the fact that the EPA is trying to classify PFAS chemicals, a handful of chemicals now, as hazardous substances, which is really turning the industry upside down, because if all of PFAS is everywhere, it's PFAS in my room, and if that is all now considered hazardous, or at least the disposal of that is hazardous, it's going to be really, really expensive. The trash business is going to be really expensive. That trickles down to the municipalities because they receive the wastewater, right? So the wastewater from all this nasty trash water, that leachate from the landfills. So it's really quite crazy. It's important to regulate it. It's also important to understand the alternatives out there and how it's going to affect people every day.
Yeah, entirely. And so you had mentioned that it was made in the early 1900s. We made this chemical in raincoats, and where was it primarily used when we first started manufacturing it in the early 1900s?
The early 1900s. I can tell you that it's predominantly and it's predominantly used in firefighting foams. So if you go, if your house is on fire, my house was on fire and my kids were inside, I would probably prefer for the firefighters to put the fire out than let it burn. Although interestingly, I have read some papers that show that this firefighting foam actually doesn't work. I should say water from a hose they have found can be equally as effective as firefighting foam. So that is really good. But it's traditionally been used in firefighting foam. It's really big in the semiconductor industry. There's a lot of PFAS that's very critical to semiconductors and parts within that industry, pans or pots and pans. And that was one of the early adhesives, right? This is just it's everything.
So we started manufacturing this chemical back in the early 1900s for pots and pans and fire retardants and semiconductors, and then we kind of fast forward to today or the 1970s, right? Where there was this big bubble up movement of people starting to finally realize, hey, this chemical is carcinogenic. It's not healthy for us. And then you end up to kind of today where the states and the federal government are pushing regulation through the EPA, through the Clean Water Act, through just state governments regulating this both from a water and a soil standpoint. Are we still manufacturing it today? And where does that regulation reach to and from? Are we still using it and manufacturing it in the semiconductor industry? And then the real business model here is somebody like Aclarity that can basically clean the downstream so it doesn't get back into humans? Or what's kind of the solution where we stand at today, given where we came from?
We are still using it in most industries. As I said, they have found some green alternatives in some industries, although sometimes the alternatives are even more toxic than the ones that they're replacing, which is not great. So can you remind me, what was the question? What was the original question?
Yeah, it's kind of like we had this riding this train from the early 1900s of manufacturing it. We figured out there's a problem, and now there's states and federal government trying to regulate it. Yeah. What's the kind of state of PFAS today? Are we still manufacturing it? And if we are, what's the fix? How do we fix this problem? Because we clearly know it is a problem.
Yeah. So right. So that's where I was going. So there are a fair amount of industries who are looking for alternatives and trying to phase it out. Some companies have committed to phasing it out in their products, or even on the manufacturing side of actually manufacturing PFAS chemicals. I think that they are so useful in various different industries that they're not ever going to be phased out. And I think that while designing for the environment and really truly phasing them out and replacing them with greener and better alternatives for humans and for the environment, for animals, etc., is great. I do foresee that they're going to be manufactured for quite some time. And I do think that the way to limit exposure is clean the areas where they're waste essentially.
Got it. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Which I guess kind of leads us perfectly into what Aclarity does, given your explanation in the beginning, right? So you guys focus on landfills right now and other tech providers that are basically cleaning up PFAS. Walk us through how that works, right? You said that where there are large areas of PFAS in a landfill or something, you've seen more prevalence of people that have cancer. How does Aclarity fix this?
From the landfill standpoint, and actually, I'm getting an echo. Are you getting an echo?
No, not too much.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think we should be able to also clean that out from the post-production side of the podcast.
Okay, that's great. All right. So from the landfill side, when it rains, the rainwater trickles through all that trash, essentially, right through the landfill. And then there's something called leachate that comes out. Now it's pretty nasty, concentrated liquid waste. It looks muddy. It's gross, and it has heavy metals. It has a lot of organics like solvents and surfactants and lots of just kind of pretty nasty stuff. And a lot of that, there's a lot of PFAS that come out, right? That comes out from the landfill. The PFAS is fairly concentrated. I mean, like there's a lot of PFAS in there. It's a lot of volume of water that comes out, but it's a lot smaller than, say, New York City's drinking water. We're not talking billions of gallons a day. We're talking, tens or 100,000 gallons per day. And what we do is we deploy our equipment. So the first phase is that we or the first stage of deployment is actually taking our mobile trailers and driving them up, parking them. And inside of a mobile trailer is a full-scale system or the full-scale reactor that processes this leachate essentially in a single pass. So where we pull it up, we take a hose out, we hook it right up to the storage tanks, and we start pumping the water through. We turn the power on and start pumping the water through, and we destroy the PFAS, instantaneously. We typically have a trailer at a customer's site for multiple weeks. Depends on how big the landfill is, how many streams they want us to treat, parameters that we may change, which could include the flow rate through the reactors and the electricity. Really, the voltage is what we control. And then we transition to a full-scale system. And that's kind of where we are as a company, is we have these mobile deployments. We are commercializing and just wrapping up the final factory acceptance test, which is so exciting, of our large, our larger like permanent system that has 8 reactors on the skid. The skid is basically the housing of the reactors. Everything is fully automated. There's I can sit here on my computer and I can press start and go and play around with some settings and whatnot. So it's really neat. That's how we destroy PFAS and some other contaminants as well at landfills. And that's the majority of the focus of the company, right? Because from an impact standpoint, almost 50% of PFAS in the world ends up at a landfill. So we are trying to go and really destroy PFAS forever, get it out of the cycle. We don't want to go back into the stream, going into the oceans, into the rainwater, to the wastewater treatment plant, just going back into the environment. We want to destroy it forever. And we do that permanently, at landfills. And when we zoom out, we also have areas of focus working with some other channel partners and technology providers to build optimal, wastewater treatment trains to destroy PFAS in other segments. So I'll give you an example. We're working with Denora Water Technologies with a combination of 2 technologies. It's an ion exchange system, which basically captures their little beads, almost like a Brita filter. If you think of it like a Brita filter, where PFAS stick onto the beads, and then after all the beads are saturated with PFAS, then what we do is we rinse the beads off. We now have a small volume, still a very large volume, but in general, it's a smaller volume of this liquid waste. It has a lot of PFAS. And then run that brine right through our system, destroy the PFAS. And we have as much time as we need before the next rinse. So it's an awesome opportunity to get into markets like municipal drinking water, especially in small groundwater systems. It's just a perfect fit. We're scaling with other partners as well into other industrial sectors and industrial manufacturing, like pulp and paper, for example, semiconductor, doing some of the up concentration if it's not concentrated already, and then doing the destruction on the back end.
That's super cool, Julie. That's awesome. And when you kind of look at as much as you can share on how your technology works, right? You have this PFAS that's part of the leachate or part of this Demora product in the little bubbles that you mentioned or little beads. What's actually happening in the Aclarity system? Like, are you creating a sludge or a brine that's like PFAS only, and then you're kind of storing that or like electrocuting it? Like, what's happening? How do you take the PFAS out of these like waste streams?
Great question. And we essentially zap it, right? Like we electrocute it. You can think of the inside of a reactor as a battery in a way, right? One side is positive, one side is negative. So they're both electrically charged. And the PFAS essentially swim in this water and they stick onto the anode surface. That's the positive side. And we break the carbon fluorine bond, which is the strongest bond known in nature. That's why they call this the forever chemical in PFAS. They're forever chemicals. But we're taking the forever out of forever chemicals, breaking the carbon fluorine bond right at the surface of the anode. And then the rest of the PFAS basically fragments out until it's very, very basic non-hazardous compounds. And it just keeps swimming on by once it's broken down. So there are no filters. There's no brine, no concentrate, no reject that's formed. There's no waste in general that we form. And we're able to discharge that right out. Another really good thing about this too, I'm just speaking from the technology side, and you asked the question, so I'll elaborate. We also produce other types of good chemicals, like we call these oxidants, the chlorine and ozone, hydrogen peroxide. So we're disinfecting the water as well. We're removing some other contaminants like ammonia. These are nitrogen compounds. Some other, in my world, I call them organics. They're just, organic chemicals that are typically not good to have in water. So we remove a lot of those as well. So while we're degrading PFAS, we're also degrading a lot of other things, which is really, really very much of an added benefit for customers.
And if the audience can kind of get an idea of how long this takes, right? Like, can you kind of walk us through what the average landfill size is, and like how long would it take for you to take all of the landfill and basically convert it via one of your mobile units or one of these now stationary units? How does it work? What is like the time scale that we're talking about here?
So fortunately and unfortunately, it's forever. It's always going to rain on the landfill, and the landfill until it's closed and lined and sealed for forever. It will always have, even close landfills have leachate, although small typically. But every time it rains, it goes through all that trash, and now you still have that nasty leachate water. So the average size of a landfill is probably 50,000 gallons per day, which is a decent amount of flow, but it's not unreasonable. And so every landfill is different. So I can't really tell you how many skids would be necessary, but it's sort of on the range of 10, for example. Sure. It's not crazy, right? We're not deploying like 100 massive, 100 skids in parallel. It's very manageable to handle the entire flow. Yeah.
Yeah. And that makes so much more sense while you guys are moving to kind of a fuller scale deployment, because the mobile situation is great to kind of build a proof of concept, get something out to a landfill ASAP, and then you can go ahead, and because it is a forever issue every single time it rains, Aclarity basically just lives right next to the landfill.
We're there permanently. There are some projects though that are temporary, in which case we still take our trailer. We have some projects with really, really neat customers to destroy firefighting foam. They have lots of firefighting. You'd be surprised. It's not just airports and not just fire academies and whatnot, but there's food and beverage companies who we're working with, and some others who have big storage tanks. And that's an awesome opportunity for us to take the trailer, park it there, process it all through, and then leave and be done, right? And all they don't have PFAS to deal with anymore. That's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is really cool. I want to kind of go back to your founding story. Why do you care about PFAS? Where did Aclarity come from? What's the story of Julie starting this company?
Yeah. So I started learning about PFAS when I was in my undergrad. I went to WPI. It's a technical college in Worcester, Massachusetts. And my first degree is actually in environmental policy and sustainability. I ended up started working for the US EPA in Boston in 2010 while I was doing my undergrad. And that's how I learned about PFAS. I learned about PFAS at EPA. And back then it was called they were called PFCs, not PFAS. That was kind of the nomenclature back then. I was doing a lot of stakeholder engagement, on Cape Cod, mostly in New England, right? So Cape Cod and New Hampshire, some places working on the policy side. I graduated with my degree in environmental policy and sustainability, and then stayed on for a little bit more to get a degree in engineering. And then I worked for the US EPA for a couple years. And then I decided to go and pursue a PhD. And I got a fellowship to pursue the PhD. So I started that in 2014. And I was researching innovative water treatment technologies. And one of the technologies was electrochemistry, and that is the base technology, really the core technology of Aclarity. I filed the first patent for the company when I was still a student in 2016, and then started taking some business courses. I actually went across campus, took some MBA courses, and definitely had a lot of whispers in my ear that I really had something going on, and took first place in the University Pitch Challenge and spun the company out in 2017. So I technically didn't finish my PhD, but I did have about 3.5 solid years of PhD rigor.
That's such an inspiring story. And so when you started and you won this pitch competition, can you, for the entrepreneurs listening out there, I think it's always exciting to hear kind of those first few steps. How'd you get from 0 to 1 of getting the technology, and what lessons do you have, right? I mean, as entrepreneurs, I think we always stumble and we look back, hindsight 2020, you're like, that's the thing. If I didn't do that, I would have gone so much more quicker, or I could have spent less money. Yeah. Two kind of questions there. What was that 0 to 1 journey, and what lessons do you have for the entrepreneurs listening?
Yeah. So in no particular order, but one is find advocates that you can talk about your idea, and people who can connect you to, especially customers or potential customers at the time. Even if you don't have a prototype, you still should be talking with people who could potentially buy your product or service. So surround yourself with people who will inspire you, who will help you, put you in front of the right people and promote you. And I did that at UMass, especially with their entrepreneurship program. I was very tied in there. I did an accelerator there and did many more accelerators after that. And these are programs that really truly accelerate your company. So that's one. Number two, I touched on this, but really focus on who the customer is and try and find that early product market fit, even if you don't have a prototype. And that goes to my number 3 point, which is especially, so I come from the hardware side, right? But even software, get a prototype, make a prototype, even if it's in duct tape or if it's this most simple code or it's whatever it is, like get a prototype and start testing it. I think that the faster that you can do that, the faster you can show that you have something and you can try and validate it. And you will learn so much going through the process, or have somebody build it for you. I mean, whether you build it or have somebody else build it for you, or just something super simple, build it.
Yeah.
Get it out, test it, show people. I think that, I think just doing that and like working really hard we made 1 million prototypes. I don't know. I think I have 6 still. I have 1 probably in my house. I was like this mad scientist building prototypes, but eventually we got, we had customers pay for us to build prototypes and to do testing and whatnot. But it's just so important to prove it out, even the simplest little thing.
So, like, I guess tactically speaking, on those two things, one on the customer side and the second on the prototype, what markets were you first looking at? Like, it seems like you guys have kind of zoned in initially on this landfill side, but what was the markets you had in on your whiteboard, but you ended up not, going towards? That's question 1. And then question 2 is, I'd love to hear from you. What did that first prototype look like? And also, I think for the audience, because sometimes we hear that so much, but as an entrepreneur that's first getting started off, what did that tactically look like?
I'm laughing at both of those questions. Oh my gosh, starting a company, I definitely, my head is screwed on a lot tighter. It's really important to go through the whole process and start with extreme naivety. So here we go. My original hypothesis, and I was very hypothesis-based. I actually took an entire semester class on hypothesis-based customer discovery. And I absolutely recommend that anybody who's even thinking about an idea to commercialize, Google Steve Blank and take some lean launch type of classes and call customers and just try and see if you're onto something. So I did that. And my first hypothesis was that people who own a home, or I guess I had 2 kind of demographics, people who own a home, I was targeting parents. And then also builders of new construct multi-unit buildings would be interested in plugging something in terms of a point of entry system where the water comes from the tap to treat tap water, where the water comes in to the building and destroys PFAS. We were also doing it for disinfection as well for bacteria and viruses. And I talked to so many people and so many construction workers. I talked to people who dig wells, and I talked to suppliers of pumps and everybody. And actually was really onto something and actually worked with a potential channel partner for a couple years in this space. And they funded a fair amount of our research in the beginning. I ended up doing a pretty deep dive on the economics with this channel partner, Watts Water Technologies. I'll say them. They've been amazing. They're awesome. But we did a technology kind of a techno-economic analysis, and it's just the margins and selling up through different, distributor platforms. It just wasn't going to work out at the time. I do think it's something that actually could work in the future, but it's complex and just the margins weren't there. So that's where I started. We pivoted pretty heavily into the industrial sector, focused almost exclusively in PFAS in 2019 and going to 2020. And then I think probably 2020 and on, we've really focused a lot in landfills.
Got it. And I just want to kind of explore a little bit about what you were saying a second ago. You were, the PFAS side of it came out in 2019, 2020. What were you looking at earlier on? You said kind of other bacterial contaminants. What was the spectrum? And I guess even though you didn't do that yesterday, back in 2019, 2018, it seems like with the Aclarity technology, you have the ability through your basically anode and different materials getting stuck to that, being able to actually look at other different things.
It was really hard. And I spent so much time with advisors and myself and my team. Well, we can do this and we can do this and we can do this. And it's so easy to say, oh, we'll do it all. Right. And there were definitely times when we were really drinking the Kool-Aid, thinking we were just going to do it all. But the lack of focus from a technology standpoint, from a go-to-market standpoint, everything, it just made it very difficult. I was always focused on PFAS, but I was also, it was typically PFAS and microbes, bacteria and viruses. Mm-hmm. Originally, they were sort of packaged in the same, product as what I was trying to explore. We still degrade very easily. We disinfect, right? We break down bacteria and viruses, but we don't necessarily market that too much, especially in landfill leachate. They don't really have any guidelines against bacteria and viruses.
Yeah, makes sense. I guess that might come to use more around the drinking water standpoint, or potentially like lakes and lagoons, if you were to look at that market, obviously.
Absolutely. Yep. It is a good benefit. Very helpful benefit.
Two kind of questions I have moving forward is with the work that you're doing with Aclarity, what does a roadmap look like moving forward? And how does that parlay into the regulatory environment? Because you brought that up at the beginning of the EPA is looking at, you also worked at the EPA. Is there anything, what's happening there, right? So and how does that kind of roadmap into the future with what Aclarity is doing tie into that regulation side of things?
It's a great question. It's super complex. So we've been so focused on the engineering piece and getting equipment that can be field deployed. That's not going to leak. It's not going to, God forbid, cause a fire, going through this rigor, real hard rigor with our manufacturer and with our team to get something that's going to work and is going to succeed for long periods of time. So that's been the focus for so long. And don't get me wrong, I'm definitely historically, I've been the market person, really, really interested in the market and the go-to-market strategy. We now have a pretty solid team. I think there's 17 people on the team now, which is super cool.
Wow.
So yeah, it's awesome. So I have an amazing marketing person and a whole team that just has taken a lot of our original concepts and really brought it to life and brought the rigor around it, which has been really important. We're launching our first permanent, large scale skid. It's 8 full scale reactors. Maximum flow rate's about 30 gallons per minute in a single pass, right? It's just to destroy PFAS. It definitely depends on the liquid and it does change, but max is about 30 gallons per minute, and we'll just stack. So we'll stack them in parallel to handle higher flow rates. Our big goal for this year is to get that skid on site at a customer site, and we do actually have a commitment from a customer to put that on site.
Awesome.
So we're just in the process of kind of solidifying that and signing the paperwork and getting it on there, but it's permanent. I'll just slide in here too. Our business model is a service model. We've actually trademarked destruction as a service, and we build, own, and operate and fully staff all of our systems. We charge on a cost per gallon, and we make it really simple. Really simple for the customer. We're responsible for all operations and maintenance. We have a performance guarantee, PFAS performance guarantee, so the customer feels comfortable, right? Just something like PFAS destruction is new. No one's really done it before, and so we're trying to take a lot of that risk out from the customer. So anyway, our big goal for this year is deploying that first skid. Next year, the goal is to have at least two permanent up and running full scale systems. And we're working with big landfill owners and operators. And the goal is to really work with them as a partner and to scale to all of their landfills to alleviate their PFAS needs and risk.
Yeah, really, I actually love that. Destruction as a service. You're a DAS provider. I like that. That's really, and you guys price per the gallon, which eases the burden, if I was just to think about it, from a capital investment or a capital investment side from the landfill, from them having to procure the capital for the equipment and move it out there. And you guys just say, look, we'll solve your PFAS problem. We're a DAS company. We'll just charge you per gallon. That completely makes sense.
That's it. We
really
install it all. Yeah, we do it all, which is really great. Directly, with the landfills and our other customers.
And what does? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it. I thought you had another question, and I can't remember. Oh, and you were just talking about how it relates to regulations and
the regulation side. Yeah.
Yeah, it is so tough. Some of our customers are screaming for a solution right now, in which case we're going on site, doing all the work with them. Some of them are screaming for a solution, but aren't going to press the go button until, some of the regs are officially, coming in. And we do anticipate, everybody anticipates that regs affecting our business and PFAS as a whole are going to be coming in throughout 2024, which is in a startup's land, although we move really fast, it's so far away.
Yeah, from a startup standpoint.
It's tomorrow. I mean, these are massive equipment installs. We work with really great engineering firms, design firms to do the whole drawings of what the whole system and even the housing looks like. So they're big projects. So regs coming in 2024 is essentially tomorrow for us, but it's also a little bit scary because the day that the regs come in, we're trying to build up our supply chain, even staff. We just hired our first supply chain person. We're working very closely with our contract manufacturer and trying to make sure we have that plan ready for when that go button hits. We at least have predictable timelines where we can get volumes of these systems out. It's scary, but it's really exciting.
Yeah, that is really, that's super exciting. And you're kind of at this inflection point, both in terms of the ability for your product to work, right? Because you have these proof of concepts out there, you've deployed the mobile units, and then intersecting right with regulation coming out in 24, which will just be a forcing function to get more deployments out there. Totally makes, it's really exciting time. So we're almost at time. I have one question that I like to ask all of the guests here at Liquid Assets. Do you have a book or a show or even in like a Netflix show or a podcast that you listen to that has kind of changed your outlook on the way that you built the business or your life or even water or PFAS that the audience can grab?
Do you think I don't have a ton of time now with 2 young kids and running the business for a lot of these things like I used to, but there's so many good books for founders and just especially founders getting started. I can't even think of the name of the book that I'm trying to reference now, but there are tons of good startup books. I like some of the negotiation books. Those have helped me a lot. I've been listening to the book Who It's all about interviewing because, we're doing a ton of interviewing and hiring. That's really helpful in developing an actual scorecard and a checklist for interviewing and asking these, tough questions. It's been really helpful. So yeah, maybe not a great answer, but
No, definitely the book Who, and then I think you mentioned the Lean Startup by Steve Blank earlier.
yeah, I did. I did mention the Lean Startup. Yep.
Yeah, those are two that I'll definitely ping on I'll put them on your profile when we publish the blog. But definitely, Julie, thank you so much for coming on Liquid Assets. For all of those of you out there listening, you can find Liquid Assets wherever you get your podcast, whether it be on Google or on Apple, or you can go to liquidassets.cc. Julie, we've been a pleasure. This has been absolutely amazing. Thanks a ton for coming on the show.
Really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks.